Today's episode is sponsored by Future State Media, experts in off-Amazon traffic for Amazon sellers. Future State Media will build you a custom-made website to deliver sales for you on Amazon. Built to grab traffic from search engines and social media, your site can be used as a secret weapon for launching products on Amazon or just to stabilize your Amazon sales. It means you can also build an email list on autopilot. Go to futurestatemedia.com for your free guide to Google SEO for Amazon sellers today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the 10K Collective podcast, a subset of the amazing FBA podcast for Amazon sellers who are 6, 7, 8-figure Amazon sellers. Today we are talking to Dave Storey of Amazon FBA Build to Sell, who builds and sells Amazon businesses and helps other people do the same. So warm welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you, Michael.
Good to have you here. And the subject of buying and selling, or especially building and selling Amazon businesses, is very often discussed these days. Mostly have had a lot of business brokers on the podcast. You come on before and your story's a little bit different. So just give us a bit of a background about yourself and how you came to be in this field, Dave.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so back in 2014, I quit my job in industry. I'd worked for 20 years in manufacturing as a product designer, project manager in planning, quality, supply chain, and also operations management. And I always had a dream of starting my own business, and I just happened to start an Amazon business. Things went absolutely fantastic in the first 2-3 years, and I had that business valued at about $3 million. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to go on and make it bigger. I'm going to go on and see how big this thing can get. And that turned out to be a huge mistake. I hadn't really optimized that business and built it on solid foundations. You know, I'd just gone on the normal training courses that most Amazon sellers go on, and they don't tell you how to do a lot of these things. And so I struggled to get back on my feet, and I knew I had to do something. And I just happened to have a friend, and he just exited his Amazon business for mid 7 figures. And he said, listen, you need to think differently. I says, what do you mean? He says, you need to walk in the shoes of a buyer. I says, you need to think like about your business from the perspective of a buyer. Don't think of it what you want. It's what the buyer wants that matters. So I thought, right. So I knew he must be right. So I set about months and months of research and speaking to brokers and other sellers and even buyers of businesses. And I worked out a plan for my business, and I implemented that plan and got it back on track and managed to exit it, but for nowhere near what it was worth. So it was a big lesson to me. And I realized after this, I thought, this is just, I've built a process here. I've built something which is a blueprint, which is repeatable. And I need to tell people about it, because I've got so much from the Amazon community over the years. I just needed to get it out there and tell people. So I built a training course, and here we are now.
So that's quite the journey you've gone on. What's interesting is, unlike the brokers that we've had on the podcast, you see things from the sort of man in the middle perspective. You've gone from that perspective of a business owner who sees the value in the business for themselves, which is understandable, and why not if you're building it for yourself, but to transitioning to seeing it from the perspective of the person at the other end of the process you want to have, which is to sell your business. And I guess that, you know, you've had an expensive lesson from what you were saying, that you got it valued at a very high valuation, and then relative to that, you got less money than you were hoping for. So I guess other people can, you know, pay you a little bit of money for some training. They're going to make a whole of a lot less of an expensive mistake themselves, right? So that sounds like you've come full circle to now offering that to other people, or giving people a leg up to be in the position you've got to. So tell me a bit about your process that you built. I know that last time we spoke, you just built the course and it was about to go out, you know, all new, and see if anyone wants it, and the usual anxiety. So I understand you've had a really successful beta course launch. So tell me a bit about some of the learnings that you've had and that your students have had from that.
Yeah, so I did a beta launch. I got about 20 students on at the beta launch, and the feedback's been absolutely tremendous. And you know, what I've really realized is that there are so many Amazon sellers out there that don't know that they're sitting on something which is really valuable that can generate them huge wealth. They're just living off the cash flow from the business, and they don't realize that selling the business is the most valuable thing it can ever do for them. And because they haven't been taught the things they need to do in order to optimize the business for sale, they are just going along and doing the things that they pick up from the Amazon selling courses, from the communities, networking, and other areas of information. And yeah, they're sitting on something, or could be essentially like I did. I left it too late to sell. You know, that it could be happening to them right now, and they don't even know it. There's an optimum time to sell.
Yeah, that's a really important point you've just made because a lot of people think vaguely about selling one day. Some people say they're going to sell, you know,
Yeah,
in future. They're very conscious about it, but the timing piece is particularly critical, isn't it? Because I
yeah,
would say, particularly now, having spoken to a couple of business brokers who had a very clear view about where the money is going in the world now. A lot of traditional assets, like
yeah,
retail outlets, obviously are extremely poorly responding to the world's events and the
yeah,
COVID situation, and will be probably for the next 2, 3 years, maybe forever, if they get really damaged. And so there is a lot of money in the world sloshing around looking for a home. So there are buyers in the world looking for businesses, but there will be an optimum time to try and put your offering out into that kind of market, right? So I really
absolutely.
think the timing thing's got to be critical. I mean, what's your view on the timing piece?
I had one of my students came to me and said, Dave, he says, I know why I haven't been able to sell my business now. He says, because I've never thought about building a plan and absolutely optimizing it for sale. He goes, now you've shown me what to do. I'm setting a date to sell it. I'm speaking to a broker. I've actually got a plan in place. I'm going to sell it. So, and I had another guy that said, wow, he says, you've virtually doubled the value of my business overnight. You've put 200 grand onto it just just by giving me the understanding of what I need to do. It's really, really positive stuff. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
The main thing that strikes me from what you've just said that I'm taking is that when you show people a plan that's concrete and solid, and we're going to discuss obviously what that is,
yeah,
then the idea of sale goes from theoretical to doable, and then
yeah,
it becomes something you can put in the calendar. And I think
exactly.
that's the critical difference, right? Because
Yeah,
you can make vague pronouncements about goals, and we've all set them, and we've all had them. You sound a lot more organized and meticulous than I am. I mean, I've done this for a lot of my life, and I do generally sort of get somewhere close to goals I've set, but there's a lot of slippage because the process between where I'm at now and where I want to go is often unclear, and I have to kind
yeah,
of figure it out for myself. So I guess you had a similar experience, but now you've clarified the process. So I guess the first thing I've got to dig into a series of questions to try and hopefully ask the questions that anyone listening who owns an Amazon business but isn't yet ready to sell it is asking themselves. I mean, the first thing is, let's dig into why should you build an Amazon business to sell? What is wrong with hanging on to a business and taking the cash flow from it forever?
yeah. Like I said, the selling a business is the most valuable thing it will ever do for you. There's a well-known formula that if and it calculates essentially if you took, for example, the cash flow from your business for 3 years, and then you worked out how much you would get, or when you sold that business, um, uh, based on a three times multiplier, it's usually 60 to 70% more cash in one lump sum when you actually sell it. And if you think about it in terms of that, and then you think, well, if that's true, and it is true, it's a well-known calculation. So then how much time am I spending optimizing my business to sell on a weekly basis? And the answer for most people is none, because that information and that training and the process, they're not aware of it. So if you're not aware of something, then you won't do it. And that's the whole essence of the training courses, to make people, give them all this information, give them the tools, the process, and a method of planning and putting all this in place in the business.
Cool. So why then does maximizing the value matter so much versus the distraction, if you like, between building a business to sell versus the everyday act of just building the business full stop? Is it that important that we really, try and eke every last penny out of the business?
Absolutely. I think, and that's wealth, and the difference that the focus on the tasks that you need to do to optimize a business to sell can have on your business is massive. I mean, we're talking, depending on the size of your business, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, just by work doing slightly different things on a day-to-day basis. You're actually doing the same amount of work, but you're doing it intelligently and you're focusing on the final selling value of your business. And if you do that, it's likely to sell sooner too, because what you focus on expands.
Excellent. Well, you convinced me there. I mean, adding hundreds of thousands without doing more work. Um, so one of the things that strikes me, and I know that you've had that feedback yourself, is that it feels like a lot of work to
Yes.
add yet another thing to do, not just work on your business,
Yeah.
but work on making it a sellable asset. I mean, is it a massive amount more work? How does that pan out in real life?
Actually, it can be less work. What I found when I worked on my first business that I sold was that there were so many things in that business, like shiny objects that I'd been attracted to through all the marketing and everything that's out there. If you're an Amazon seller, you'll know what I mean. That I really shouldn't have been doing. They weren't actually driving the effective, positive value of my business. And there were so many things that I should be doing. And when you add these two together, you have a business which is more manageable. It's more focused on a common goal. So yeah, I can see many people will think, "Wow, this is just another thing I have to do." But in reality, you're going to have a business which is more uh, focused and is actually less work.
Excellent. Well, that sounds very attractive. More focus, less work. But I presume there's another question that springs to mind, which is, all right, so look, it's obviously going to be some work to build, even though it sounds like a
Yeah.
better thing. But why don't I start that? If I'm going to sell my business in 5 years' time, which
Yeah.
is not an uncommon time frame, why don't I start that in 2 years' time or so? Do I need to even think about it now?
Yeah. Um, the short answer is yes, and that is because the sooner you start, the better. It's like these things. There are things that you can put in your place in your business right now that take time to grow, that take time to mature, and the, what I found was, yeah, I only had 18 months to get all this in place, but at the end of it, I thought, wow, if I'd done this years ago, imagine how big my business could have been then. And the other factor to consider is there are probably and highly likely things that you are doing as an Amazon seller in your business right now that are damaging the value of it. There's lots of common pitfalls. There's things that you'll be doing which are not adding to its value or having an absolute opposite effect. So this is why you must understand all the factors that drive the saleability and value of your business as soon as possible, and making sure that you have a plan which is absolutely aligned to getting maximum value of your business as soon as possible. Whether you're starting a new business, and you build it in from scratch, fantastic, because that's what I do. I build my businesses to sell right from day zero. Or you're planning on selling it in 6 months' time. You've got quite a mature business. You need to get on with it straight away. Do not leave it till you go to a broker and then it's too late.
Interesting. And by the way, you're making really think because I'm working with a coaching client at the moment who's very successful in many other ways as a marketer and as a business owner, as is often the case with some of the members of the 10K Collective Mastermind. The ones who make a good success of this often have a good business head, but they're coming into Amazon Business News. Sometimes people will ask me to sort of help them build their business. And one of the things I'm thinking of in that conversation needs to include, okay, are we aiming to sell this thing? And if so, let's build it as a sellable asset from the beginning. So you're quite right. It does change. I'm immediately thinking, okay, how would I advise a client? And if you ask a different question, you get a different answer, right? I guess I would advise very, very different things. For if I'm advising somebody to build a business that's sellable in, say, 5 years' time, for starters, I've got to project myself 5 years into
Yeah.
the future and go, how does the world look? How does Amazon look? How does e-commerce marketplace competitors and opportunities look? So that's very, very interesting.
I,
I hear what you're saying.
I, I guess the mindset of most sellers will be that get as many sales as possible, get as many products as possible, which is great. And some sellers do build big businesses and sell them successfully for 7, even 8 figures. However, if that mindset was focused on really, really driving the value of your business through knowing what the buyers are actually looking for, then that business, which is, did well, could do far, far better. I'm talking, hundreds of thousands, millions, like I said. Um, that's just
Yeah, I guess the sell as much as you can and get as many products as possible idea is not necessarily going to add to the value of the business, right? Because if they're not profitable sales, then I guess for starters, that doesn't technically add to the value if you're
yeah.
basing it as a multiple of profit for starters. So that brings us really to one of the big questions I have, which is what are the classic errors that you see amongst Amazon business owners who either definitely want to sell or vaguely want to sell one day? What are the typical errors that you see in their businesses?
Yeah, I guess the main one, and I have touched on this before, was the one that I fell into was just selling too late. Thinking that your business is doing well, it's profitable, it's generating plenty of cash flow. There is a concept to understand that called the product life cycle. Products have a life cycle, and what that is they have an introductory period, and then they have a normal stabilization period, and then they drop off at the end. And it's the same with the Amazon businesses. Depending on the type of product, it could be longer or shorter. But if you leave it too long and your business it starts to drop off the other side, by the time you come to sell it, you're selling something which is either stagnated, or at the worst case, you could be selling something which is going down, and you will not get a good multiplier. You will not get as much. You will not get as much money, nowhere near for your business if you leave it too late. Um, so that's, I guess, is the first one. The second one is generating a lot of extra costs in the trailing 12 months before sale. This trailing 12 months is the window, is the critical 12 months where your business is valued, and it's very easy to generate lots of extra costs. You've got to have the mindset that $1,000 spent or £1,000 spent, and you, based on the 3 times multiplier, is actually worth $4,000 when you come to sell your business. So if you didn't spend that $1,000, let's say you were doing a marketing experiment which didn't need to be done, and you spent $1,000 on it, you didn't need to. That's worth 4,000. So you got to be in that mindset. Other pitfalls are surrounding the supply chain, not really knowing the supplier, and essentially building unnecessary risk in for a buyer. So that's that one. And I guess the other big one is business organization and systemization. If you haven't structured your business in a way that a buyer can pick it up and understand what needs to be done and manage it effectively, if you're the main cog in the business, then that can have a really big negative effect on the value of your business.
Yeah, those all make sense. And actually, what interests me as well about this is that doing the opposite is really going to make it more of a real business anyway. Because you could argue that a lot of people treat an Amazon type business or many other forms of small business are basically a solopreneur activity, and there's an intrinsic tension in the word solopreneur, which apart from being a bit ugly, solo mean one person, entrepreneur meaning creating a business. Well, hang on, if it's just one person, I would argue it's not really a business yet, because if you stop
Yeah,
working and the business stops producing money, that's what I would call a job. And Seth Godin talks about this a lot, and I
right.
think he's the most clear articulator of this danger, which is the difference between being a freelancer and being an entrepreneur or building a business. I think either is fine, and you can make a lot of money if you're a top lawyer or something like that as a freelancer,
Mm.
and enjoy your life and love your work. But if you think you're building a business, but you're really building a job, then it's going to be a rude awakening when
Yeah,
somebody looks at your life and goes, "I don't want that job." So I see that a lot. I mean, and I do also see businesses where people do the opposite, which is their business is killing it and they're hardly doing anything. I'm like, okay, well, why don't you hire some people and blow
yeah,
this sucker up? So, there can be two opposites there, right?
yeah. I guess that's one of the amazing things about having an Amazon business is you can have a multi-million-dollar business, and you or maybe one or two others can be the only people working on it. It's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. But
Yeah.
If you're the only, the knowledge is all in your heads. Look at it from the perspective of a buyer. That's not good.
No. I mean, also because if it's in your head, they're either going to have to employ you, and you may not want that yourself. If your
Yeah.
entrepreneurs don't normally make good employees, or they're going to have to sit there and painfully drag it out of you, right? And that's going to be a lot of work. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Even if they do employ you for a certain period of time, this handover time,
Hmm.
there's always going to be risk that there are certain things come up after that time that you knew about and you haven't handed over, and
Yeah.
that's yeah, it's risky.
Absolutely, and also very unattractive for somebody who wants to buy a sort of ready-made business. In other words, a ready-made system. And I would argue, in a way, and I'm saying I'm very good at this. You're clearly, Mister, very process-driven, as you would expect from a project manager. And in the end, if you haven't got a system of systems, you haven't really got a business. You've got a business opportunity and somebody working really, really hard, normally you, to make it work. So this brings us to the next question, really, which is you talked a couple of times about the importance of knowing what buyers are looking for. So in your conversations with buyers and brokers and your
Yeah.
experience as a seller as well, what would you say the main things that buyers are looking for?
Yeah, I guess they can be categorized. The main one is low risk. So essentially what a buyer is looking to do is get their return on investment through investing in your business. They want that back as soon as possible. And if there are risks involved in that, then and their risks are high, then that's going to just lower the amount that, or the multiplier that they will offer on your business. The second element is this transferability factor. So if your business is going to be difficult to transfer the assets, difficult to transfer the information, then that's not good. But if it's the opposite, that is really good.